Welcome to the YouTube edition of this week's Highland League Weekly panel from the Press and Journal, where we discuss all of the results from the opening weekend of the Breedon Highland League for the 2024-25 season. This is taken from our main Monday Highland League Weekly show, where you can catch highlights of two matches for Martin United against Banks and Forest Mechanics against Rothes. Those are over on the Press and Journal website. You need to be a subscriber to access them, and you can subscribe to the Press and Journal at the moment for the low price of just £1 for your first 3 months, and that will give you access to our sports pack and all of the sports content we produce, whether that's the Highland League or Aberdeen FC or Ross County or Calais Thistle, etc. Okay, I'm joined here by Paul Third and Callum Law to discuss the weekend's action. The first game, our main game this week, as mentioned, was for Martin United against Banks and Stuart Anderson, the Martin United manager, after the game, I thought gave quite a good assessment of the clash between two title contenders, I'd say, which Banks the away team, won 2-0. Stuart Anderson said that the difference between the sides was that Banks took their chances.
I mean, in general play, I didn't think there was a great deal between the sides at all, in all honesty, and there's a couple of chances either way, but there wasn't an abundance of goal-mouth action really, but just the wee difference was a couple of times Michael Phillipson got a wee bit of space in the game, an excellent pass for the first one and a great cross for the second, and Lachie McLeod and Andy Hunter have done the rest. But I mean, great start for Banks in terms of winning a game like that, but as Stuart was sort of saying with our Martin, you couldn't really be too downhearted either, and on another day, Graham Rodger with a couple of chances he had, or Julian Wade, some of the positions he got into, they maybe take those opportunities, and it's a different game, but Banks were the clinical side on the day.
Yeah, I thought Julian Wade looked lively. As you say, Lachie McLeod, opening goal, perhaps a slight hint of offside, but one of those it's impossible to tell with our camera angle.
I think Johnny Crawford might be playing him on. It's really tight. I'd love
our angle. It's not great, and you can't like see. I think because there's somebody obstructing it, you can't see even in the freeze frame like where Johnny Crawford's like legs are. But I think certainly I've stopped it numerous times. I think Lachie McLeod's beyond Stuart Smith, so if he is on, I think it can only be Johnny Crawford. But I'd maybe be more inclined to say that he was perhaps just off, but certainly going by the protests that there were as a result of that goal. But what I would say is if it's as close as it looks in our angle, you do have a degree of sympathy with the linesman, because it is very tight, and it's, well, obviously don't have VAR, but the old sort of adage with those things was traditionally the attacker maybe got the benefit of the doubt in those circumstances, so maybe that was in the thoughts on Saturday, I don't know.
That's why we love the Highland League.
Day one, we're arguing already.
Paul, this seems like the fitting moment perhaps to ask you a question that me and Callum have both asked ourselves and answered, in terms of sides we're tipping, we've used perhaps the favourite for the Breedon Highland League title. Who's your pick at the moment? Would it be Banks on the weekend's evidence?
Well, funnily enough, I just said to Callum before we came through to record, I quite fancy Banks this year. They've strengthened, have learned the ropes, so to speak, in 2 seasons now in the Highland League. I think they're well placed to really mount a proper challenge this year.
I think as well, just linking up to Saturday's game, in terms of the strengthening, out of the signings they've made, Nathan Cooney's the one that maybe has gone under the radar slightly, but I thought he was excellent on Saturday, just in terms of his reading in the game at times and covering and different things like that. And he'd wasn't in the highlights actually, but a really good block at one point in the first half from Paul Campbell and things. So I think even you talk about the signings, but it's like even he looks like he maybe hasn't had the same fanfare, but even the likes of Nathan Cooney, I thought fitted in very well on Saturday.
Okay then, a win for Rothes, but clearly the 2 red cards to Forest players had a bearing on the game. I think the more controversial one of the two is probably Kyle McLeod's for 2 quick-fire bookings in the first half when the score was only at 1-0. Thoughts on that sending off?
Well, there's no probably about it, because just to deal with the Corey Patterson one and jump ahead a bit, I mean, the letter of the law now is if goalie's out of his box like that and it's a handball, then it's just a straight red now. So that was kind of, as much as it just sort of added insult to injury for Forrest a wee bit, that was pretty cut and dried. But in terms of the Kyle McLeod one, my personal feeling is, I think both, it's hard because you only sort of catch it, the camera only sort of catches the second one as it's happening, but the second one especially I thought looked very innocuous and more like he was just leaning in than anything. And I think if players are getting booked and sent off for that, we'll have quite a lot of sending offs for those sort of tussles that you see fairly regularly in games. I mean, referee David Alexander only has one look at the incidents and he felt they were warranted a yellow card, which is up to him, but I thought it was pretty harsh, really. And I think to me the thing is, if that was your team, or if you were the manager and that was your player got dismissed in the manner that Kyle McLeod was, you'd be pretty sick about it.
I'm slightly different. He's not swinging his arm in either incident, to be fair, but his arms are high because he's just trying to shield with the ball coming in. Does he catch a player in either instance? I don't think so, but it's the shape and just the difference between the two of them as they're coming together. Having said that, if you've just been booked for an offence, surely you're not thinking, well, I'll have the same sort of shape.
What I would say to that is, if Kyle McLeod, after he's been booked, just stands there like that and doesn't try and hold the ball, and he's then getting his manager going, what are you doing? We need you to hold the ball up. You know, I think he's been harshly dealt with. But the other thing I would flag as well while we're on decisions, because I will come to the actual performances in a minute, but I actually think the referee has quite a big bearing on the first goal, and negatively for Forrest, because in the build-up to it, Forrest have the ball, Mark McLaughlin's clipped by Ross Logan, looks a foul, sort of standard foul in the middle of the park, ball breaks, I think it's Sean Sutherland, referee lets it go, but there was no real advantage to Forrest. They quickly lost the ball, and then as Rothis turn the ball over and break, Mark McLaughlin is still on the ground, which means Ross Logan basically gets a free run. And I mean, Rothis took advantage of the opportunity well. It was a good counter-attack. Greg Morrison finished it off, but I just think if you're looking at that, really, if the referee gives the foul on Mark McLaughlin, which I think he probably should, situation doesn't arise. And it's certainly, even if you're saying, oh, he let it go, fair enough, it was easier for Rothis to counter-attack because as a result of Mark McLaughlin being on the ground. So I thought that was maybe a call. If you were a Forrest supporter, you could have a bit of annoyance at as well.
On the performances, you mentioned Greg Morrison. He got the first goal for Rothis. Now, as viewers will know, I've got an encyclopedic knowledge of the Highland League. Did Greg Morrison formerly play for Forrest?
No, he's
just because, like, I thought his celebration was quite subdued after he scored that opener. No, it was first goal of the season for your team, and it was kind of like, you know, it's almost like he didn't realise he'd scored.
Greg's just pretty.
It's a cool customer.
Cool customer. Doesn't get too excited, but I thought in terms of the performances, and this is where we've sat and spoke about red cards and things and decisions, but I think Rothis, in fairness to them, they looked at, well, both teams actually, but Rothis to start with looked a threat when they got forward. Like, I thought Ross Logan caused a lot of problems with his pace, and even Jake Thompson, in terms of sort of widening the left, I thought him and Liam McDade down that flank linked quite well and caused a few problems. And then if you've got Greg in the middle and you give Greg chances, he'll score goals. And I think, you know, you can talk about players being sent off, but Rothis did their job pretty well, and a welcome 3 points for them to start the season. The flip side, I thought Forrest as well at times got Matt Jamieson, new signing. I thought got into some decent areas, and maybe at 2-0 he probably feels he should score with that chance. It just drifted wide, and if he did, it's maybe sets things up slightly differently. But I think if you're Forrest a wee bit, you sort of write that off as a bit of a freak result and try and sort of build on the positives rather than reflect on the negatives too much.
It does feel like a game where everything that could go wrong did go wrong if you're a Cans player or supporter. But yeah, Ross has certainly knew how to make that space count, and they took full advantage.
And we do have to give one thing we haven't touched on, credit to Ryan McRitchie for donning the gloves, no sub-keeper, and he stepped up, and I thought he did a couple of good saves and punched a cross away, and he actually looked quite commanding, Big Ryan, in goal.
I mean, I did think they were going to go for at one point when you saw them all sort of crowding around deciding who was going to go in goals. I did think it was getting to the stage of like, it went on for so long that we're going to start drawing lots or whatever. Yeah, but yeah, stood up well, Ryan. Wick Academy 2, Fraserburgh 0. As we go look at the rest of the results, that's for me the obvious place to start. A big result on the opening day for Wick Academy, a disappointing result for Fraserburgh. Harmsworth Park, only 4 visiting teams won there last season, and it continues to be a fortress for Wick this term. Clearly, I mean, it's early days.
It didn't surprise me, that score. I think first day of the season, Wick is, as we know, are so good at home. Fraserburgh, like other teams, will find it tough up there this season, and Gary Manson's got a good side. When they're at home, they're very formidable.
I think the big difference start of this season compared with previous is the squad Gary Manson now has, and it's settled, because even if you compare it, you speak to people, and people used to say in recent years you wanted to go up to Wick early in the season because in recent times, often at the start of the season, they've had players unavailable because they've been away playing summer football, or like last season, their first game of the season, I think they'd only had something like 14 players. He was still trying to get players in, and there was players away and things like that. But he now has a squad where he's got depth in most positions, and even in terms of fresh legs and need to change a game, he's got 6 or 7 subs he can put on, and Gary's words after the game, they don't diminish the quality. So, and I think I said in the preview before Saturday that I thought Wick would be a bit better again this season, just because they've had that, and a lot of the players, the likes of Gary Poulin, who scored on Saturday, being 1 last season, was his first season in the Highland League, and there's 5 or 6 others like him who I would expect to, some of them like Gary I would put as one, had good seasons last season, but I would expect him to step forward again this time around. And you talk about the home record, it's even second half of last season, Brora, Banks, D for Martin, Bucky, all went up to Harmsworth, and none of them managed to come away. I mean, a couple of them got draws, but none of them managed to come away with 3 points, which says a lot about it. You look at the other side of the coin, the Broch had chances, certainly. I think a couple of good ones in the first half, didn't take them, and Mark Cowie kind of had no complaints with the result overall. And this old thing about taking your chances makes a difference, but certainly nothing's decided one way or another on the first day, but certainly not the way Fraserburgh were looking to start.
The one thing I would say is, although nothing is, I agree with Mark, that nothing's decided on the first day, there is an element of, I feel like Fraserburgh have in the last perhaps couple of seasons been a little bit slow starting, and on a day where obviously for Martin Banks and D play each other, something had to give there, but Banks and D win, we'll come on to it, but Brora win, Brechin win. If you consider Inverie Locos a title contender, they win. Fraserburgh slip up, and it's like, it's less margin for error, isn't it, in a league where there isn't a lot of margin for error in a lot of seasons.
Well, that's one way of looking at it. For me, I think you guys have focused on how wide open is this title race this year. We've got 6, 7 teams thinking we could be in with a chance, and that always comes back to the head-to-heads are so important. I know Fraserburgh will be disappointed to have lost at Wick, but they've got Bucky coming. sorry, they're going up to Bucky soon. It's the Brora. It's when they play Locos, when they play D, when they play Formartin. These are the games in Brecon that dictate where you finish.
But I don't think you can really call it until the end of the season, to be honest with you, Ryan, because you talk about the margin for error thing, depends a lot on what sort of league it is, because if it's a league like last season where 81 points wins it, you end up, there is quite a bit of margin for error, and I think it maybe it won't be 81 points, but I think it could be 83, 4 or 5. My feeling at the moment is it's not a league where I see it like the likes of the season. Fraserburgh won it, and even you go back when Cove won it and Brora won it, and it was 90 points plus. And then if you wanted to win it, it really was, you could probably only drop points in 4 or 5 games. I don't personally see it being a league like that, so I think there is probably a bit more scope. And as 30 says as well, it's like the head-to-heads between the sort of top 6 or 7 usually have you look at last season, out the top 6, Bucky had the best record in head-to-heads, won the league. Season before, when it came down to Bucky and Brecon won both games, won the league. Season before that, Fraserburgh had the best head-to-head with the top 6, they won the league. So I think the head-to-heads are a big bearing on it. And what you said as well, the other side of that, if Fraserburgh had won, would Brock supporters of that be sitting here going, oh, well, that's a relief, because all the other contenders won, we had to win up there.
It's a box tick.
But also, let's see how all the other teams go when they go up to Harmsworth Park.
Well, I don't think it's a trip anyone will be relishing.
Okay, let's move on then, because this feels like quite long so far. No more supplementary questions. Brora Rangers 5, Turriff United 0. Steve Mackay's first competitive game back in charge of Brora Rangers. Goals from Tony Dingwall, two from Tony Dingwall. Jordan McRae got a couple, and Michael Finnis, one of their summer signings, scored as well. Seemed like this game, it was only 1-0 at half time, and maybe ran away from Turriff a little bit in the second half, but Brora have got a lot of firepower when they're playing at home. Yeah,
Brora did. Maybe you wouldn't have predicted the scoreline, but I think most people would have expected Brora to win that game, and they did it. Their slick movement with some of the goals in the final third, first one especially. Jordan McRae's sort of hold up and link up play to the fore. Tony Dingwall finished it off. Turriff actually competed quite well in the first half, but then dropped off it a wee bit after the break, and when Brora are in the mood, you can't really afford to do that, and that's probably, Turriff are one of the teams you would like to get closer to the top 6, but Saturday probably explains in the past couple of seasons why teams like Brora are in it and teams like Turriff are a wee bit further down.
Last season's runners-up, Brecon City, they started with a 3-1 away victory at Keith. Mikey Ironside had Keith ahead at half-time. Ewan Loudon, though, he pulled a goal back for Brecon. Anthony McDonald made it 2-1. Ewan Loudon then scored a penalty, having missed a penalty, or had a penalty saved earlier in the game. So Brecon off to a winning start. Again, it's another case of job done, isn't it?
Good result for Brecon, I think. You're away from home, first day of the season, you're 1-0 down. Questions are being asked, and the response has been very good in the second half. And Ewan Loudon, again, coming up trumps for them. He's such an important player. I think.
Particularly now Grady McGrath's left as well.
Keith, would Keith have taken that?
Well, no, I think when you're in front, Keith probably feel a wee bit frustrated not to take something out of the game. But good performance by all accounts, which is a good starting point. I think what would frustrate Craig Ewan slightly is, I think at the start of the second half you'd probably expect a wee bit of a Brecon onslaught, maybe found an extra gear, and then they equalised, but then within sort of a minute, 2 minutes they scored again. I think from a Keith perspective you'd be hoping once you've conceded the equaliser, don't lose another one quickly, and that's what happened. But I think Keith can take a lot of credit from their performance and start of the season, but Craig Reid, although he was beaten by the second penalty, showing his prowess at saving them as well. That was a theme of last season.
I seem to remember Craig Ewan being quite frustrated about the number of games, especially early last season, that if they lost one, a second quickly followed. So I'd be a little bit concerned, I'm sure. First day, but to see that pattern continuing.
Devon Vale 0, Inverurie Locos 2. Now, Locos won this one 3 goals from Cole Anderson and Jay Halliday, but they actually had a man sent off within 7 minutes. They played 83 minutes with 10 men, so my maths is 7 minutes. They got Nathan Mears sent off. I've seen the footage. We're quite zoomed.
We'll be able to show you the footage on screen just now.
So here you go. It's an off-the-ball incident between Mears and Devon Vale's Harry Noble. I found it quite difficult to tell what was going on. What
Much
do you
ado
guys
about
take?
nothing. I'm going to use that phrase again.
Well, I think...
I didn't see...
I mean, they've sort of tussled, and I think Nathan Mears has pulled Harry to the ground and then flicked out with his hand as he's getting up. But again, these sort of incidents, how many of them go on off the ball and aren't spotted? Quite a few, I would suggest. But the linesman's seen that one, and Nathan Mears has gotten his marching orders. I mean, again, you sort of feel like it's, as you said, much ado about nothing. It probably is a wee bit, but at the same time, I'd imagine Inverurie and Dean Donaldson maybe are looking at it and going, well, you've given like the assistant and the referee the chance to send you off when you didn't need to by sort of that wee scuffle off the ball. So, aye, it is what it is. But I mean, Locos, beyond that, very good first day for them. That's happened, and then they've won 2-0. You couldn't really ask for much better than that.
Okay, and well done to Locos Paul Coots for coming back from a 10-day holiday in Turkey and being fit enough to go straight back into the Locos lineup. I thought that was quite impressive. Devon Vale, work in progress according to their new player manager, Gary Wood.
I think, I mean, seems like it'll take time with Devon Vale to sort of, he's been sort of mixing things up in pre-season and trying a few things to sort of find maybe the combinations that work best and things. That'll still take time, but I think the frustration for the Bamfers is playing against the 10 men. I think Gary felt it didn't really do enough in the final third in terms of testing the Locos or maybe creating chances, and the way the game transpired, I think he would be frustrated with that. But as Gary's been at pains to say, I think the last couple of weeks it's not just going to be an overnight success at Princess Royal Park.
Okay, Lossiemouth 0, Clattenacudden 2 is our penultimate league game. We've got to discuss a Michael Weir own goal, and then Alan McPhee struck before the break for Clark. Sounded like it was a Clark-dominated first half and perhaps a more even game after the break. But that's a good start for Connor Gethins and Lily Whites.
Well, he'll be thrilled if you considering the start Clark made the last season. And to get off the mark on day one is a huge step in the right direction for them.
Well, both Locos and Clark.
Yeah. And Connor Gethins has recruited well for me this summer. My not complaint, but I think the weakness I've always seen in the Clark team is a lack of experience. Well, that's not the case now. I think they've got really good, some wise old heads to help the younger lads in that side, and that's shown with a result like that at the weekend.
Seemed to be a game of two halves a wee bit. I think Lossie actually played quite well in the second half, but couldn't find their way past Joe Mallon, which is something that's been said plenty over the years. But I think certainly Ken Clark did enough in the first half. Josh Meekins hit the crossbar as well, and they'd be thoroughly pleased with their day's work.
Huntly 5, Strathspey Thistle 0 rounds off the Breedon Highland League matches from the opening weekend, 2024-25 season. Colin Charlesworth spoke after the game, the Huntly manager, about people suggesting maybe there was a lack of goals now that Andy Hunter has left the club and their team. Robbie Foster as well. I don't know if that was aimed at us, but
probably.
But Angus Grant with a couple in this one, Brodie Allen, Sam Robertson and Lewis Crosby also netting. So I mean, no goal fears for Huntly so far. Definitely
not, and a lot of this talk about Huntly all summer has been about players that have left, but the players that played on Saturday answered the question very well. I mean, all 4 scorers are players that I think Huntly, you'd be, if they're looking at having a good season, you'd be hoping all of them can probably get to at least double figures. The likes of Angus probably even more than that, but I think, in terms of a first day of the season, doesn't really get any better than that for Huntly. They scored win 90 seconds and just went on and won convincingly from there. And but for Tony Dingwall's goal in stoppage time for Brora, they would have been top of the table as well. So can't ask more than that. I was interested by their late goalkeeper. Their goalkeeper was drafted in late on, Logan Ross, on an emergency loan, I think, from Ross County, with Fraser Hobday struggling. So not a bad replacement to be able to bring in at short notice, certainly. And on the other side of it, Strathspey, sort of heard a bit of chat about this being the start of a new era for the Granton Jags, and big changes on and off the pitch. Signed 19 players, I think, this summer. Clearly, a bit like what we're saying with Devon Vale, but probably on a bigger scale in terms of it being a work in progress, because that's not the start they were looking for. And from what I've heard, they were sort of put away fairly easily by Huntly. And I mean, Huntly were 7th in the table last season, Strathspey were bottom, but certainly going forward, Bobby Beckwith and Ronnie Sharp will be looking for them to be a lot more competitive than that.
Okay, before we move on to one final game from another competition, here's a look at the Breedon Highland League standings following the first weekend of action. Thanks for watching our analysis of the Breedon Highland League's opening weekend of results for the 2024-25 season. Just a reminder, if you were to watch our main Highland League Weekly Monday night shows this season, which includes highlights of at least 2 matches, features, even more Breedon Highland League content from us, as well as our Highland League Weekly Extra shows, which are generally out on a Thursday and feature highlights from selected Wednesday matches. You need to be a Press and Journal website subscriber. All of that content's over on the Press and Journal website. But at the moment, you can sign up to our sports pack for just £1 for your first 3 months, which I think's a very good deal. So we'll maybe see you over there. Next week's panel will be available on YouTube again, though, if you'd prefer to stick with that option. We'll see you then.